I've managed to experience a lot of rides and attractions that are no longer around. These are 13 Disney attractions that I've experienced that you no longer can. Over the years, I have been blessed to be able to experience a number of different rides, attractions, and parks that no longer exist. I had a wonderful trip to Six Flags Astroworld in Houston about 2 weeks before it closed and got to experience that park and had a fantastic trip. I've also been on a number of different roller coasters that no longer exist, many of which actually made my list of worst roller coasters I've ever been on. Yeah, there's good reasons those coasters aren't around anymore. I've done videos on both of those subjects, so you can check them out if you would like. But I've also had the incredible privilege of being able to experience a number of Disney attractions that no longer are around. So here is a list of 13 Disney attractions I have experienced that are now extinct. 5 of them from Walt Disney World and 8 from Disneyland. So let's start off at Disneyland, and then we'll get over to Walt Disney World later. Disneyland was actually the first of the Disney parks I experienced. My very first visit, I was 10 years old and 15 and then 18 and got to experience it many times as an adult. So a lot of the things I experienced, I have kind of these vague memories of. For example, my first ride on this list would be the PeopleMover. Yes, I do remember the PeopleMover, and I do remember it being quite a bit different than the one actually in Florida. I remember the trips over the water where the subs were. I can remember going in and out of some of the buildings there, but the part of the PeopleMover that really stands out to me is the old Tron part of it, where you were in this long hallway and the lights were flashing and zooming, and even though you were crawling at a really slow speed, it felt like you were flying in that room just because of the way the lights flashed around. Tron, at least on the ride, was really cool. The original movie, well, it's kinda lame, but it was a neat addition to the PeopleMover. Never got to experience it as Rocket Rods. I hate seeing that empty track sitting there. I wish they'd do something with the track, either tear it out or bring it back to life. Number 2. Superstar Limo. Yes, I actually did get to ride on this thing the first year that Disneyland's California Adventure was open. We were there shortly after 9/11 and got to ride it. It was different. It wasn't as horrible as a lot of people make it out to be. It also wasn't really good, and it would have aged very, very badly with all the different Hollywood actors they put on the ride. If you haven't seen a video of this thing, check it out and you'll probably be happy you didn't get to ride it. It's much more fun now as Monsters Incorporated. It actually even uses the same cars. I'm happy I got to ride it and experience it, but yeah, it's okay that it's gone. Number 3, Adventures Through Inner Space. Okay, now here's a classic Disney ride. Remember, I was 10 years old, so a lot of my memories of it are kind of vague impressions. I remember just being utterly fascinated by the shrinking machine. It looked like a giant microscope thing, but you could see the cars moving. Now, my 10-year-old mind, I didn't see how this worked as a prop. I was actually imagining that it actually worked, and it was the coolest thing. My memories really revolve around the loading area of the station, where you could see the cars that people were getting into, the shrinking machine, which just stands out. And then the one other part of the ride I really remember is giant snowflakes, wondering and thinking they could be real, because my 10-year-old mind, this was a real thing, and thought it was amazing. And so I do remember these giant snowflakes coming right by our clamshell, thinking they could possibly be real, and just thinking the whole thing was really fascinating. Kind of wish it had stuck around, although I imagine it probably also would have really showed its age at this point, and I really can't complain with what they replaced it with. Because I love Star Wars, and Star Tours was awesome. Got to experience Star Tours when it first opened, and that was absolutely amazing at the time. So I really can't complain about its replacement one bit. But happy I did get to experience it. Number 4, Mission to Mars. And again, memories from that same trip as a 10-year-old. I remember sitting in a big round room with a big huge screen on the floor. I can remember the room shaking and vibrating as if we really did launch. It felt really cool and really real to a 10-year-old. I remember watching the Earth shrink as we rocketed away. I don't remember too much more other than feeling like I had actually taken a rocket ship to Mars. Of course, 10 years old, you're not thinking about the G-forces and how you should be pushed back in your seat and everything. It was a really neat, fascinating trip for a 10-year-old. Cool ride. Happy I got to experience that one. Number 5, the original submarine voyage. Yes, I actually got to ride the submarines in their original form. Now, we didn't have living mermaids outside, but if you remember the old soundtrack, there is one point where the submarine captain thinks he's starting to go a bit nuts. Because if you looked out your window, you would see mermaids in the water. It was a really fun ride, and again, as this kid, it was fascinating and amazing and took me to a completely different realm. Yeah, it did feel like you were really going under the water. I loved the old submarine ride, and when I got older and it was still there, we made sure that we took a round on it, and hated when it closed. I was so excited to see them reopen it again. Yes, Nemo is a little bit different. It has a couple spots that are exclusively Nemo, but much of it is still the same, and it was really neat to be able to see it again on our last trip to Disneyland. Just always love that ride. It's just so cool and unique. Number 6, the Skyway. Yes, it is a typical sky ride, a Von Roll Skyway. Yes, you had your buckets. I rode in the square bucket days. I didn't get to ride in the round ones. But it was really kind of neat to be able to hop into this thing and cruise across the way and go through the Matterhorn and to be able to look down on Tomorrowland and Fantasyland. And as a kid, it was also really nice because it was a break for our feet and a way to get from one side to the other and not run. Because my dad, when we go to Disneyland as kids, we ran from ride to ride and pushed and didn't stop unless we were sitting for food or something. So to get to sit for a few minutes with my dad was an amazing thing. And to get this incredible view of Disneyland and go through the Matterhorn, well, hey, that was icing on the cake. Number 7, Captain EO. Now, when I first got to see Captain EO, it was really cool. It was awesome. Michael Jackson's at the park. It's space and sci-fi. My first initial memories of Captain EO were that was awesome. And then they resurrected it briefly, and I got to see it at Epcot a few years back. And let's just say, like a lot of things from the 80s, it didn't age real well. Cheesy, corny, a couple times a little bit on the creepy side. Captain EO is not something that necessarily needs to be around. It was good for a quick nostalgia bit. It's definitely gone on to much better things than it used to be. Let's just say if you haven't seen Captain EO, you're really not missing much. Number 8, the Golden Horseshoe Revue. Now, I have an absolute love for saloon shows and parks and melodramas, and it started at the Golden Horseshoe Revue at Disneyland and the Birdcage Theater at Knott's Berry Farm. I love the old melodramas, and I could do a whole thing about that. But the saloon shows that they do at parks now all kind of look back towards the Golden Horseshoe Revue. It was fun, it was funny, it was entertaining, it was exciting, and for a kid, it was immensely entertaining. I love this show. I love the entertainers. I love the show they put on. The showgirls were really pretty. Keep in mind, I was 10. I was just in awe of them. And I can remember at one point the showgirls were actually out in the audience. We were sitting down the floor seating, and one came by and gave me a tap on the shoulder. And as a 10-year-old, I'm going, "She touched me." I was 10, okay? Girls were this really neat, scary, kind of fascinating cootie thing. Absolutely love the show. Hate that there's nothing in there now. I wish Disney would bring back the Golden Horseshoe Revue on both coasts. Seeing that theater sit empty stinks. That really never should have been closed because you had to fight to get reservations. That was one thing I remember both of my trips with my dad. Is one of the very first stops we made when we got in the park was racing over to the Golden Horseshoe so we could get our names on a show reservation so we could even get in to see it. It was that popular. Yeah, Fast Pass before you had Fast Passes. Jumping coast, let's head over to Walt Disney World, where I did get to experience a few things that are no longer there. Number 1 on my list is Maelstrom. Yes, the old boat ride that was at Norway. Frozen is cool. I love Frozen. The new ride that's there is amazing, but Maelstrom was such a classic experience. I love the trolls. I love feeling like I was experiencing part of Norway itself, learning a little bit about the country while also getting thoroughly entertained. About the only thing I didn't like about Maelstrom was the movie theater at the end, that you almost kind of half felt like you were captive waiting for it to open up so you could walk through. I did actually watch the movie a couple times, and of all the culture movies in the World Showcase, it was probably the worst. Watch it once and there wasn't much reason to see it again, although I did a couple times. So the movie itself isn't a great loss, but the ride was really neat. I miss Maelstrom. I do miss Maelstrom. Number 2. Lights, Motors, Action. This does still exist out in Paris, and so it was great a couple years ago when I got to go to Disneyland Paris and see it again and film the whole show, because it's an amazing show. I understand scrapping it and putting in Star Wars. I mean, obviously Star Wars. But it was one of our favorites. We loved to go see the show. We loved to watch the stunts. And really, at the time, it fit into the theme of what Disney's Hollywood Studios was. As a working movie studio, you could watch how they make movies. Okay, yes, you know they're not making a real movie at the time, but you get an idea of how they would do it and some of the stuff they would do, and that was just really cool, and hate that they took it out. It was an awesome show. Number 3. The Great Movie Ride. Kind of related to that, and again, it harkens back to what the original theme of the Studios Park was. The Great Movie Ride showed you all these classic movies, and it just fit beautifully into the park. It really accentuated the theme of what Hollywood Studios was while experiencing all of these classic movies. The theme! The Hollywood that never was and always shall be. And the theme now is, let's see, you got Hollywood, you got Toy Story, you got Star... I don't know what the theme of that park is anymore. I don't know that Disney does either. Number 4. Stitch's Great Escape. We never got to experience Alien Encounter, so I can't comment on that. But Stitch's Great Escape was actually probably my kids' favorite ride at Magic Kingdom. Okay, not a ride, not really a show. They loved it. I could not take my kids to Magic Kingdom without going to Stitch's Great Escape. Wasn't gonna happen. So I got to experience lots of chili dog breath. I actually didn't mind the ride. I found it entertaining and amusing. It was definitely a bit on the scary side, so I could see why it wouldn't work is the scarier form for Magic Kingdom. But we loved it. We had a great time doing it. And yeah, I miss it, especially when it's not sitting there even doing anything and there's apparently no plans for it. That's just lame. And then number 5, the Moving Yeti over at Expedition Everest. Yes, I got to experience the Yeti in its original form, as well as Disco Yeti now, where he moves and just has flashing lights. A lot of people like to talk, and when are they going to fix the Yeti? Why don't they fix the Yeti? It'd be so much better with the Yeti. I hate to tell you this, but the honest truth, it really didn't make much of a difference. It's like 1 second and you see an arm go. And that was about it. You're on a moving train, you really didn't notice it much. And really, Disco Yeti isn't that much of a difference in impact on the ride. I can see why they're not going to fix it. It's not worth the time and the money and the effort and everything else for something that really isn't going to make a difference. It was cool to see. Overall, the impact's not a big deal. Certainly nothing at all like Bird on a Stick. So that's 13 different attractions at Disney that I experienced that are no longer around and you can't experience anymore. Have you gotten to experience some old ones? I'd love to be able to hear your thoughts and views on it. Please share them in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to check the description below too for links to my fan pages, merchandise, other information, and more. Thank you as well for my patrons to help make some of my trips possible, like that one where I got to experience Captain EO. That happens because of the financial support of my patrons, and they help me be able to produce content. If you want to know more about Patreon and the perks that come with supporting, be sure to check the link below or at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. This is 13 extinct Disney super attractions. Yes, they're super! My memories really evolve. Yes, I actually did get to write. Yeah, I wrote the submarine. Because if you looked out your windows, you would see submarines. Because, yeah.